UK. It's time to do some .NET Core stuff. Hello, anyone that is over here. Probably not a lot, but if there's someone watching, hi there. So today I'm going to make some changes to the entities of the group management API. These are what are used to store stuff in the database. And they are following the usual way we do this, just getters and setters everywhere. And in the use cases, we do everything. So you create them like this, and there are more things, and we must know that we shouldn't put anything in there and whatnot. So my idea is to make some changes for this to be more object oriented. So instead of these classes just being bags of properties, they should have the logic to keep those properties correct. So my idea is to take a look here. EF core constructor exactly this. So instead of having just a constructor without arguments and then doing everything with getters and setters, we'll create a constructor with the logic to make sure that the entity is correct. And apparently this is new in EF core 2.1, so I'm glad this exists right now, because I wanted to use it. Okay, so the changes. When we are creating a group, so if we go to create group, we need to give it a name and set its creator. So, and then add it to the group users as an admin. So this is all logic that can be put inside the group. And done in the constructor, for instance. So the group must have a name and a creator. It's mandatory. So we'll start doing some stuff. We'll get rid of this because the name will be, no, it will be private set, because we can change the name. The ID will also make it private. Row version private. Creator private. And this one, maybe it can be read-only. I'll probably do some changes later, but for now it can be read-only. So name. Eventually I'll need to create some guards or use some library to do the guards better than this, but for now. So we'll by doing this we'll start having some errors because the rest of the code is expecting just to mess around with this. And when we create a user, we want we want to move this part. In fact, let's do something different. We'll put this as an iRead-only collection. So in here, it can't do this anymore. We want to centralize the logic inside the entity instead of letting the rest of the code mess with it. And we'll create and for now can be a list, then we'll see if it's the best one. And we'll return this as group users as read-only. So the only thing that the users of the group class can do is use the public API of the class instead of reaching out into its code and doing stuff. So the creator is set as an admin when you do this. The ID is set by the database, so we leave it like this, and the row version as well. So this will be the constructor that the application will use throughout when creating. So we can replace this with equals new group, which has the request name and the current user. Just to check. Okay. So the responsibility to keep everything tidy is put in the class instead of spread around. Now this will be used by this class, but to use this feature, so we can do two things. We can do it like this and create like a private group without arguments. If we do this way, Entity Framework will set things directly in the properties, so it works. Or we can create a constructor with everything in there. Let's just try it like this for now. Let's see what. Okay, this thing I'll leave for later, because I would like to, as much as possible, get rid of this row version checking in the part where we are just doing business specific things. But the name, now because we put the name property private, we get an error. And that's good. We could use name like this, but instead we can do something to make it more clear that we are renaming. So we can create a new method called rename. It's true that in terms of the change is exactly the same what we were doing, but by doing this way, it's a very DDD-ish thing. So it makes it clear that this is a domain logic requirement, not just setting properties in DTOs. So to do and I didn't make a proper intro, but this is in preparation for episode 36. 35 is ready, just need to publish it. This is for episode 36, where we are trying to make things more object-oriented. So think of a strategy. Okay, we'll take a look at this in a bit. Hi Nunu. Sorry for being late. Were we scheduled? So, I need to do one thing. Because I put this as a read-only collection, Entity Framework won't be able to use it to set things in there. So, we must tell Entity Framework to go in this. So we need to go to the migrations, which are in the infrastructure project. Migration of the configurations. I know I can do this with a string, but now this one doesn't like it. So with one, can put group. Hopefully this will work. I don't like doing, I'm not a fan of doing this with strings. It's a bit meh. But as we are putting things private, we can't really access it directly. Now the question is, will this work like this? I have serious doubts that this will work the first time, but it's worth a shot. I'll just make a quick change to have less things to worry about in this first attempt. And I'll put this so I changed things in the configuration, but it shouldn't affect anything in the migration, so I won't run anything. Let's just try to run the application. So let's go to the application, which is in here. So pretty. I have massive UI and UX skills. Yes, I can, but I'm being lazy because I have to copy paste the migration line for somewhere because I never know it by heart. So we'll believe it's good. And I'm pretty sure it isn't. Test group. Okay, it's not working. Let's find out why. Hopefully we have some logs. Column group ID 1. What the hell is group ID 1? Well, it seems I need to try to run the migrations. If there is a change, it's because I messed something up, so good thing I have a blog to search where I did stuff. Okay, so we need to pretty sure I need, let me just check one more thing, because when I redesign this, now I need to do one more thing. Because the migrations now are inside a data folder before in the migrations. I need to, where did I put Notepad? So add migrations, the name, the starter project, because it needs to be a runnable project, not a .NET standard. And I think there's a /o data migrations. I think that's it. What? This is what I did. So the first part is add migrations with the name, then start a project to be the web project to be able to be a runnable project, and I add the data because it's the folder before the migrations. Let's see if I got it right. And I got it wrong. It went into here. Damn it. So it should be data/migrations. So they are created in there. Okay, now it's in the right place. So anything changed? No idea? You can try. Okay. Output directory, what I used, JSON output. Okay. DB context. We only have one, no problem. Start a project, we used it. Framework. Configuration, runtime, stuff. No, doesn't seem like there is such a thing. Now the migration is doing stuff. It's creating a column group ID 1. I just have no idea why, because even though I made a change in the code over here, and particularly over here, the idea would be to have the same ID, but it appears it doesn't like that. ID, group ID. What do you mean? Yeah, this is the default one, and I didn't touch this, so it shouldn't do anything, I think. So it is adding the column name group ID 1, schema public, in the group users. It appears that it's trying to replace over here. This is the group ID, and this references the group. And we are saying here that the group has many group users with one group. I don't know if we have this. In fact, I just... Okay, this works now because I used this. I didn't use this before. According to the migration, at least for what I understand, it's adding group ID 1 to the group users, correct? So it's not adding the... It's not really related to this one, because this one is from the group. It's adding a group ID 1 to this one, group user stuff. But it shouldn't, because I replaced basically what I did is replace these group users with this group users, but maybe it thinks that it's a different thing. So it's not the change. Let's try .NET EF migrations remove to remove the last one. I forget this. Yay. So it removed. Not, shouldn't, just a while. Why? Why do you do this to me? So in the initial create, there probably is a group users with a primary key. And it has a column group ID, which is targeting the groups table with ID. And when it does this, it tries to create another one. I can be tricksy and just remove the old migration and create again, but now it would be interesting to know why it's assuming it's a new one, considering is there a name? We remove this again, and I'll say this is potatoes. It didn't like something. Okay. Let's go to Google. So what do you want to find? I'll do one thing, just first check, remove another one. Pretty sure there's a problem between the chair and the computer. That's the problem with us always using the easy way. Yeah. I'm going to be tricky. I'm going to remove the database and try to create the migrations again, just to check that. If it works as expected, then we need to figure out why it isn't assuming the same thing. I never remember how to do this. Currently open stuff. Yay. Okay, so no migrations. I'll try to edit again. See what it did. Okay, so in fact it's doing something weird. So it's creating 1 and 2. So probably this is some configuration mistake. Probably. That was certain, but why is it? So let's see. What I did was ignore this part because probably it's following the convention for the one that is public, and then for the private that I put by hand, and maybe that's the problem. So let's try again. Okay, that was the problem. So let's try another thing. So I'll revert this. Let me just open here. Okay, GitHub just crashed. So I'll revert this part. So we're back to the original migration, and we'll try to add that one again, and this time it shouldn't add anything because there shouldn't be any changes. Done. What does that mean? Okay, so that was the problem. So let's remove this because it's empty. But yeah, the problem was it was using the collection, and we want to ignore this collection and use the private one. So no migrations, the code, the database is the same. We just change the way the groups work. So now everything should work as it was working before. Let's go to the page. Need to start things. I need to change the option that opens the browser automatically because this is really annoying. I'm using a browser in one place and it is opening Windows on the other one. How about now? So now this won't work because, okay, this is something that will need to be done in the next episodes. But for now I'm hammering things to keep it simple. So that the users, I can show you where did I put, I lost, where did I put data grip? Over here. So in the group management database, if we go, so we have a users table, which is where we have just an ID and a name, which is used for the creator and eventually to associate players with users and all of that. And the ID of the table is the same user ID that with the user is created, and the user is created in the auth database. So eventually what we will need to do, because these are two separate databases, is when we register a new user, we would need to communicate to any other service that the new user was created. So we'll probably use some queue to publish an event saying new user exists, here's some information. And then in this case the group management microservice will grab that event information and put it in its database. But because we haven't gone so far and don't have that infrastructure implemented. For all of this to work, we need to put the thing in the table by hand. So insert into users values, and let me open this here, and the ID and the name will be test user 1. And if I know how to write basic SQL, let's try again. New name for the group, test group. Why do you do this to me? Lambda expression used inside include is not valid. Okay. So create group. I'm doing get user by ID. So let's take a look at this. Where was that? User group query handler. Really? To do this, we'll need to do... Makes sense, but it's kind of annoying. Why don't you like? Okay, when we use include with a string, it doesn't allow us to use then include. That's boring. So if we do we need to do this? If it needs to be this way, this is kind of but we'll try it just to be sure. Let me see on the database, because it seems as if data was inserted, but then we are not being able, exactly, the group was created successfully. It's just then the query to get everything again, that's not working because of that include. Nope. Yep. That's the problem. When we want to make this part of the code more OO, so we can encapsulate things and all of that. But then, when making queries, we need to put magic strings, kind of annoying. Maybe there's a better strategy, but I'm not really sure, because these things are private. Right now, let's try to make it work, then we'll try to make it pretty. But if it's a compromise between the infrastructure having some more complexity and the domain being clearer, I think it's more important for the domain to be clearer than the infrastructure. But maybe we can do some things better. So get back here. Include path creator. It's using group users. Where is it using group users? Ah, okay, this is a problem. It's kind of annoying. So the problem is not this one. This is probably correct, even though ugly. The problem is using these group users. Because the group users is not mapped to anything, we are ignoring, and it is not being able to figure out that the problem is in there. Any ideas? I have an idea, but it's a bit weird, but let's try it. It won't do any harm. It's kind of fugly, but so I'll change this to let's do something like this will be see. This will be terrible, but just to try stuff. So this will be a list, so we can use it directly in the configuration. will this work? The annoying thing about doing this kind of shenanigans is the main goal would be for this domain part for us to do it as much in isolation as possible. So do the classes that make sense to us to solve the domain problem, and let the infrastructure worry outside. But when we do these kind of things just to make EF core happy, it's a bit meh. But it works, apparently. So migrations, they better be empty. Build file. Need to stop it. It can't build a running thing. Empty. We just remove the migration again. Not. Let's try another thing. We'll put this here. We'll do this. I'm pretty sure this won't work, but we never know. Maybe there's a surprise. Are we there yet? Really? It works? I'm surprised. So somehow it's finding a way to add things to this. Maybe they do some reflection shenanigans to find the inner, because it's an as read only, so it shouldn't be possible to add things. I'm saying this because what EF does, at least what I checked it did before, when it has some kind of collection like this, it doesn't set the collection as completed. It adds the items, but apparently it's working. This is better, so this code is more like we would like it to be. So we have private stuff, This part is as read-only, so the code that calls it, the handler, can only do call rename. We cannot do group.groupusers.add anything. So this is what we want, for the handlers to be restricted with what they can do to the entities. But then we want EF core to be able to grab things from the database and put it in there. So I'm not unhappy. No, it's working. So in summary, we have this constructor just for EF to be able to create things, because EF doesn't care about the visibility. It just goes and do stuff. That's why this private set also works. If we go to the... Did I stop this? No, it's working. So if we go to the details, it's here the info from the user. So it was able to do the query correctly. And using the private setter, just put things in there. Okay, this one was a surprise to me, but it works. I don't care. Maybe eventually try to figure out why it works, but it works. So this is looking nice. And we could do the same for group users. For instance, group user. Oh, I can clean this stuff up. This class is kind of annoying because I would like to have just the IDs. But for EF to generate the navigation properties, generate the foreign keys, I think it needs to have the navigation properties to be code first, so it's a bit annoying, but so we'll have an error because the group is doing things by hand. Okay, so we need a constructor. And there's a thing that I found out that this does. Don't know if ReSharper does, but Rider does, which is interesting, which is ctor p, and it just does this, which is awesome. Do what to a private setter? I'm not liking this. I'm probably messing up because I'm letting the D's flee. Don't know if this will work, but I can try. What was your question, Nuno? I didn't understand. This one? This one, the raw version. I can't yet, because this one is not, the problem here is not EF, because I'm using it here. Where is it? Lost it. No, it's here. Because I'm setting it here. It's not just for entity framework. This is the thing for optimistic concurrency. So if two people were using this, so if I was editing the test group and you as well, it would, this is to make it kaboom. But because I'm using it right here, can't make it private yet. I need to think of a way to do this before. What I was thinking previously would be to maybe pass this responsibility to the query handler, and the query handler would say we would say I want the user group by ID and version, and if it doesn't belong to that, and if the version has a mismatch, it will return an error. It's probably how I'm going to do it to make sure that the query works, to avoid needing to do these kinds of things in here, because it's not really domain logic to check the row version, and we could forget. So my idea is probably to move it in here, but we'll do it later. Okay, so the group has these things. We put the group user like this. So we need to test if this thing works. With all the talking, I don't remember if I tested. Okay, things broke. What broke? Oh no, it stopped. Why did it stop? We need to put the private constructor for EF to be able to start things. In fact, that feature that I showed previously, this entity types stuff, it allows Entity Framework to set things through the constructor instead of through the properties, but it has a limitation somewhere. Where was it? Navigation. Yeah. EF core cannot set navigation properties using the constructor. And because the group and the user are navigation properties, it wouldn't work. That's why we need to put this here. So let me start. The other applications are working, so I just need to start the group management. Hopefully. But it's nice that it throws an exception at the beginning instead of waiting for the application to be running. What about now? Okay, it's working. New group. Yet another one. Okay, it works. And it's setting the creator. And it's all working. Fantastic. So, yeah, we have these private setters just because of EF. So there's a bit of a balance here. If this class, if it wasn't for EF, we didn't need the private setter. We would just do this because it would be always set in the constructor. But I think because of EF, we need to have this here. So even though the domain should not know those kinds of things, there's a compromise if we want to use EF. Otherwise, the alternative would be, and probably needed for other scenarios, we would need to have just a DTO for the entities in the infrastructure layer and have the domain entities here, and then we would need to map things, and all of that would be annoying. So that's the choice, having two group user classes, one in the infrastructure and the other in the domain, or making a bit of allowing some things that probably didn't need to be here, just for things to be more automatic and have less code. Doesn't seem like a bad compromise, taking into consideration this. So the only thing that's left to do is this part. But the stream is now over 1 hour. Not a lot. People tend to stream for a couple of them, but I'm lazier. So probably I'll wrap it up for now. But the episode 36 will be about this. What? Yeah, never used. Okay. The episode 36 will be about this. I'll start making the videos of the series shorter, and if people want to see the details, I'll redirect them to the stream archive. It's probably simpler, but it sounds cool, and by having this rename, it's more a domain thing. Eventually we'll need to have a method to add a new group user, but because we don't need it yet, won't bother. Okay, what do you guys think? It's like, you prefer like this, or you prefer just doing everything in the handlers? And just a shout out before, what was CSS? What I used to make this less hideous was Bulma, just to be different. Bootstrap is what we always use, so use this. And as you can see, I didn't even change the colors. So I could use it to make this a little bit less hideous. Okay, so I'll wrap it up. Any questions? Nope. What is art to write? What you think is art to write? I didn't understand that just before saying goodbyes. No? Are you writing or not? Twitch should have a typing indicator. Okay, so I'll finish up just to not be staring at the screen like an idiot, but we can talk about it later. Feel free to ask questions during the streams or Twitter and all of that stuff. And eventually this video will be uploaded to YouTube. Yes, okay. I was asking if you prefer to do everything in the handlers or separate things in different classes to make it more cohesive, more object-oriented. And probably yes, doing this is a bit harder, at least because we are not used to it. We lost this, at least me, when I was in university. That's the way we learned things, And then when we entered the job market, we just forgot all of that. Forgot that we should use encapsulation and all of that, and just started using getters and setters everywhere, and putting out all the logic in the services. So I think it's more of we need to learn again to do things the correct way. Or it depends. If it's really simple application, just do it in the handlers and classes. Hector, next stream, hopefully next Friday. I'm doing things on Fridays just because it's easier for me. Maybe one day I change depending on what people prefer. But using classes, that encapsulation stuff we forgot and we need to get back to it. At least in my opinion, particularly in complex applications. If it's simple, if it's create, read, update, delete, just do it in the controller. If we have logic, a bit of logic, maybe start separating things into handlers. If we have a lot of logic, start doing things in classes. Of course, this application is super simple, so I didn't need to do this way. But as we are learning, and the name of the series is From Zero to Overkill, so but it's better to learn with this simple stuff. But okay, I agree, it's a bit harder, particularly because we forgot, I think. I'll wrap it up. Thanks for watching, guys. Hopefully see you in the next one. And if you can't get to the streams and all of that because time zones and all of that, I'll publish everything to YouTube. See yous. Where's the stop on this thing? It's here now. See yous.